1015 FM KDAWN.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the #1 professional wrestling radio show in Las Vegas. This is the Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Going bell to bell with the best in professional wrestling news, entertainment, and lots of Sin City surprises from inside the squared circle. Now, let's get to all the exciting pro wrestling action and bring on the host. Here is Mark Hoke.
Good morning, Las Vegas. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to another edition of the Mark Hoke Show. And as you can tell by my raspy tone, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, but that's okay. Because we do what we got to do. Crazy week in pro wrestling and a wild 24 hours. Boy, I'll tell you what, a lot happening. WWE Elimination Chamber, New Japan, TNA, just going down everywhere. And we're going to bring it all to you in the next 2 hours here on KDAWN 1015 FM, the Talk of Las Vegas, the Odyssey app. If you're not in the area, you can download that app and check us out. And, of course, we're also streaming on YouTube and Facebook. So wherever you need to listen to us and check us out, we're there for you. And we'd love to have you get in that chat box and say hi to us, too. So if you want to go on YouTube and Facebook and say hi to us, we'd certainly appreciate it. And when I say us, I would be remiss if I did not bring in our good friend from Austin, Texas, who is coming in back-to-back weeks. I'll tell you what, we don't get to do this very often, but Stu is stepping in here for me this week. Stu Myrick, Sports Guys Talking Wrestling, is back on the show for a back-to-back engagement to join us here and help me get through this show so I don't die. Stu, how are you?
I'm good, man. It is a absolutely gorgeous day here in the Lone Star capital, and glad to join you back-to-back weeks. Never spent so much time in Las Vegas, so hey, let's do this.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'll double or nothing, and maybe some other things. You know what you ought to do is you ought to come out for TNA.
That's a possibility. I'll have to see. I've got my spring and into summer has gotten booked up all of a sudden. It starts next weekend. I'll be in Greensboro, North Carolina for AEW Revolution.
Yeah.
The fan in me, of course, I want to see Sting's last match. I've watched Sting going all the way back to the early to mid 80s when he and Jim Hellwig, later known as the Ultimate Warrior, were the Blade Runners in Mid-South Wrestling, Bill Watts territory. And I have followed Sting's career every step it has taken. And so it's going to be emotional to see his final match in Greensboro where he made his name, that 45-minute time limit draw with Ric Flair, the very first Clash of Champions. So that's going to be a big one, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's going to be a terrific pay-per-view coming up next week. I mean, just a jam-packed schedule and the road to WrestleMania. Boy, that's closing in on us faster than we could ever imagine. I mean, it just seems like, we were talking about Cody Rhodes and Royal Rumble just, a couple of weeks ago, and here we are. Oh man, it just never stops, Stu. It never stops.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, we will be, I guess we're about 5 weeks away from WrestleMania in Philadelphia, the home of those dastardly Philadelphia Eagles.
Hey. Watch it.
Stinking Philadelphia. I say this in jest. I have several friends that played for the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't go too hard on them, but as a lifelong Dallas Cowboys fan, it's kind of like, it's not quite as mandated as a lifelong Longhorn. I can't like anything that deals with that school north of the Red River. But Philadelphia, that ranks right under them. So
well, if you want to root for Satan's team, that's okay. That's your call. You do what you want, but God likes the Eagles, so
I get it.
That's why the grass is green. It's why the grass is green.
I sure. I'll mention one of the funny, ironic things is that when AEW comes to town, or back in the day, WWE, and Jim Ross was on the mic. Of course, Jim Ross's entrance music is that stinking Boomer Sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he gets cheered everywhere except one place. And it's not that we're booing Jim Ross; we're booing that stupid song.
Well, you'll survive
because it is 10:11 a.m. Central, and OU still sucks.
Yep, that happens.
So,
yeah, I got a little bitterness towards Oklahoma too, but I'm past it. I'm a Penn State guy, so we tangle with those boys a little bit.
Yeah, there you go.
It's all good. I'm slightly with you on that. Okay. Slightly.
I like it.
Yeah. So, of course, we are just coming off. Wow. I mean, what a crazy 16 hours that was, Stu. I do a little sports report thing. We call it the 2 count, and I do that for one of our sister stations here, The Bet. And I almost regretted having to record that thing ahead of time. But as I was getting ready to record that, I think I had to do it at about 8:30 Pacific time. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting there saying to myself, man, I wish I had time to do this at about 6:00 in the morning on Saturday, which was just, there was no way I was coming to the station to do that. But I had already seen a couple title changes come up, and we're going to get into some of those. But that was a wild 16 hours of pro wrestling that just took place. I mean, wow.
You're absolutely right. Between, of course, like you mentioned, Elimination Chamber in Australia, New Japan had their show, and I think it was Okada's final show.
Mm-hmm.
You also had TNA with No Surrender. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, it was news breaking. Every time you look down, something else is happening. So. The ironic thing, I think Elimination Chamber was the least surprising, show of them all. I mean, it went pretty much how everybody expected, but that's okay. But yeah, the rest of it, needless to say, it raised some eyebrows. That's for sure.
Well, let's start on Elimination Chamber because, as you said, it was, I think, and, you were on the show last week, and then we had Matt Black on. And it's funny. I had asked Matt, do you see any surprises coming out of this? And he said, no. And yeah, we were pretty much right on that. Not too many things jarred anybody's senses out of that card. The first thing that I will say though is an interesting trend that I think WWE has kind of caught on to here is taking these, I don't want to say lower level, but not as important premium live events and taking them overseas, which I think is a pretty smart move. We just had Backlash go over to Puerto Rico. We had the Clash at the Castle, which, didn't see a lot of, had some great matches, but didn't see any real major title changes. And they're taking them to places where WWE doesn't get to go very often. So you're going to get a huge fan turnout because, when's WWE going back to Perth, Australia? Tell me when. Yeah. So those fans are desperate to get a chance to see those people live. So, first, I think it's a really smart move of them to take these cards and put them on in places where you're not going to get to see them very often. And boom, go the ticket sales as opposed to doing it in the U.S. where the fans, I don't want to say we don't appreciate it, but you're not packing a stadium for Elimination Chamber.
You're right. I mean, it's, bringing I'll say the B level premium live events. And, we're not talking WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, or Survivor Series. They've got a show coming up in France. They've got one coming up in Germany. Of course, they'll still have their Saudi Arabia shows. They work out these deals, and in a lot of it, and we saw it with Elimination Chamber, they will work out a deal with the tourism, side of that local government. So, these events also become like, 3-hour long commercials for people to go to wherever they are.
Yeah.
Perth, Australia, France, Germany, whatever. And we saw it all the time with Saudi Arabia. We'll still see it. We did see some of it with Perth, and I've, look, I love Australia. I got to go there when I was a young lad in the United States Army and spent 6 weeks there, and I loved it. I was in Darwin. I was up in the Northern Territories, but still such a wonderful, wonderful country, and I'd love to go back. But you bring those events there. I think it also raises the profile of those events. Because WWE wants to put on a really good card for when they go overseas. So it is a win-win, not only, for WWE as well as for that country, that city, in order to boost their tourism and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, while it did take up a lot of time in the broadcast, it sure made me want to think about going over there. The video packages were fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you too. It does make it seem like it's a bigger event than maybe what it would be in the U.S. And it makes it feel like, wow, WWE, this is international. This is something really special. And WWE is, really a global organization. So it's definitely a win-win. I think that's a great point, Stu, that you bring up about that. So it's intriguing, the opportunity that I think WWE is taking to take these overseas. And, we noticed it. I noticed it a couple of years ago when they first started doing that. And then Tony Khan taking All In over to Wembley. The doors are open there to really take professional wrestling outside of the U.S. Now, I don't know if you want to tap that spigot too often, and go crazy with it. But, I'm concerned maybe with All In doing that there every year. I don't know. I'm curious, but as I know, I think it sold about 40,000 tickets already though. So,
right.
So I think you got to be careful with it, but at the same time, it's a big world, a lot of places to go.
Well, and let's All In is still 5 months away, 6 months away. So, 50,000 tickets sold for an event that is 6 months away. We have no idea what the card's going to look like. It still speaks to how hot pro wrestling is, especially, U.S. based pro wrestling in other parts of the world. Now, admittedly, AEW, they do the U.S. and Canada almost primarily. They don't go overseas except All In London at Wembley. TNA used to go overseas quite a bit. They don't go overseas very often. Again, they're, same thing, U.S. and Canada. I mean, Anthem Sports Entertainment is a Canadian-based company. So, and that's kind of where, where WWE sets itself apart, among other things, is their ability to take shows overseas on a regular basis, and not only to the same spot, but to different places. You mentioned the Clash at the Castle in Wales, and of course, like I said, Germany, France, Australia, Saudi Arabia. They do a tour of the UK. It seems like every year. So there, the market is there. I think it's a matter of having to be smart about what you send over there, what kind of deal you can get to reap the benefits of being overseas. So yeah, I mean, I think there is room for a little more, at least a little more pro wrestling content to be from some exotic location outside the United States.
Yeah, as long as you dodge the pirates.
Yeah,
that was a funny story. Folks, if you didn't hear about that, by the way, the WWE had their Elimination Chamber being shipped through the Suez Canal, and some pirates intercepted it, and they had to actually go back all the way around the globe the other way to get it to Australia, and barely made it. So pretty wild stuff there for WWE. Is I guess Paul Burchill must have been running the show out there. There's a little old school semi old school reference there for you, but yeah. WWE ran into some pirate problems. Yikes!
All I can think of is Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow or whatever.
Oh God, unbelievable! All right, well I'll tell you, we're gonna take our first break, and when we come back, we've got more with Stu Myrick, and we're gonna break down what happened at Elimination Chamber. Now, we talked a little business, and we're going to talk about what happened in the ring. Tiffany Stratton. Oh, my. Someone's going to be taking somebody's spot pretty soon. I have a feeling. Stick around. We'll be right back.
.1015 FM KDAWN.
This is the Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Here again, your host, Mark Hoke.
And let's get back to it. The best in pro wrestling news and entertainment from around the planet. Stu Myrick's show's pretty good, too. Sports Guys Talking Wrestling. We're happy to have him back on the show this week. We'll give Stu the 1A slot, just to be nice, because that's what we do.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Your show's pretty darn good.
I do okay. I actually, ironically, this week I'm scheduled to talk to Kevin Kelly.
Nice.
From AEW Collision. I've known Kevin for several years, and of course, loved his work in New Japan as the lead English commentator on NJPW World. So I'm gonna have Kevin on. We'll break down Revolution and chat. And I always enjoy Kevin. Truth be told, he's probably one of my favorite commentators on the scene right now.
I had fun interviewing Nigel McGuinness a couple weeks ago too, and that was to me, that was a great honor to get to talk to him. I've just been such a fan of his forever, and that team is awesome. I just love those guys.
I like Nigel. I'll be honest, there are times when I have to roll my eyes because he gets a little too, in my opinion, he leans too much into the heel commentator role, and there's stuff. It just this hatred of Bryan Danielson. It's hilarious.
I love it.
That actually kind of makes me laugh. But some of it kind of just, now look, he knows what he's talking about. Of course, former Ring of Honor world champion, many years in the business. But there are times when I just kind of like go, really? You're really saying that? Okay, sure. So,
you know what? And Stu, I'll say this real quick. I think he's doing his magic show out there in Greensboro.
Really?
Yes, go. I went.
If I get to that.
I'm highly recommend it. It's a great show. It's going to tug at your heartstrings. You're going to love it. I promise.
All right.
So make the time and go.
I'll look that one up.
Yeah, please do. And tell him I sent you.
Okay.
And then he'll love me forever too. So
of course,
that would be great. But let's talk a little bit Elimination Chamber. What happened in there? Like I said, not a lot of surprises, but some interesting performances, to say the least. Now we had the kickoff show. Nothing too big there with the Kabuki Warriors knocking off Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. I don't think anybody expected too much out of that. Okay, match. Indy gets her time in the homeland as she gets to perform in front of her home crowd in Australia. So nice for her, but a solid performance there. I don't know as much to say about that match. But then we get to the women's match where Becky Lynch, as we all expected, wins that women's match, beating Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan, Naomi, Raquel Rodriguez, who ended up taking a spot that they were talking about putting Jade Cargill in, but they decided to pull her because they didn't want her to lose, and Tiffany Stratton. Not a lot of surprise, Becky winning, obviously. But your take on what happened in that match. Let me hear your thoughts first, and then I want to hit a couple points.
I'll be honest, and it kind of speaks to the whole card. It was entertaining. Yes, results, as you said, pretty much what everybody expected. And I think I saw the betting odds from Bet Online, and she was like a 1-20 favorite or something like that. But it had some good spots. It was good to see Naomi back, and it's good to see Naomi back in the fold there. You mentioned before the break about Tiffany Stratton, and I think that, we're going to see this in the next year, 18 months. They have some fantastic talent in NXT that we will see on Raw or SmackDown, and they're gonna vie for some spots, and Tiffany Stratton's one of them. It's so funny, when she first got going in NXT, you could see her athleticism. She, a former gymnast in college. You could see the athleticism. The speaking, the talking was, it needed to come along a little bit. She has definitely worked on it. And so now she is definitely one of the very bright spots as a newcomer to the main roster coming out of NXT. And I believe that she solidified herself as a legit talent on the women's roster on SmackDown.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, she had those Australian fans just eating out of her hand. I mean, they were mad and chanting BS and all that stuff when she got knocked out of there. They were excited for her for more than just about anybody in that match. And you mentioned Naomi too. And last time, the time you were on, we had talked about Naomi a little bit. And I'm a little worried about her on this roster. I think that she is going to have to do something different, and I mean seriously different, to stand out among this group. You mentioned there's a pretty good group of women coming up on NXT, and then if you were thinking about, let's put you in the booker's chair for a second and said, okay, who am I going to strap the rocket to? If you just took that match, she's probably, you put her maybe right there with Liv Morgan, and they were talking about doing a big push with Liv. So she's probably in the 4 or 5 spot, just out of the women that are in that match. And then you start going over and you start thinking about Rhea Ripley, Asuka, and some other women that are already on the roster, Jade Cargill. She's 10 maybe of the women that are already there. She's got it. They've got to do something different with her to get her to a main event level, or she's going to be kind of mid-carding it for the women for a while. And she's too talented to do that, to me. I'm not saying that because I think that's where she belongs. I'm saying that because I think she should be at the top, but they've got to figure something else out with her.
And I think this kind of speaks to the good problem that WWE has right now. There is a lot of fantastic talent, both women and men. And that main event level is going to get really crowded really quick. So you're right. Naomi, her first stint in WWE, she won the SmackDown Women's title a couple times. It always felt though like there was something that needed something to get over the hump. She leaves, goes to TNA, does well in TNA. Now she's back in WWE. That hump that she has to get over, I think, is a little bigger now. And you mentioned the women's talent that is there. And so I don't know if it's presentation, I don't know if it's skill set. There was talk about make her part of the bloodline. I don't agree. I don't think she needs to do that, and I have my own feelings about the bloodline anyway. There is something that she's going to have to find that whatever it is to make her stand out, so that she can remain at that upper mid card to main event level.
Yeah, I think she's got to get mean. I know you didn't like the bloodline idea, and I think it depends on where they're planning on taking the story here after this. But one way or another, I think she has to get mean. I think that she's got to turn. I think she's got to get vicious. I think that she has, because she seems like such a nice person. I've never gotten to meet her yet, but you can just tell that there's a really good heart there and a really terrific, just an aura about her, that she's just a great person to be around. But that isn't going to carry her through when you're talking about, I've got to get past Becky, Charlotte, Jade, Bianca, and all these incredible athletes. And not that she's not an incredible athlete, but you got to think, what do I have to do to get past them? Well, it's got to be in the attitude then. I think that she's got to turn, and I think she's got to get mean and nasty and do something different, totally different and out of character.
I tend to agree with you, but I think they got to be careful, because there are those, and I'll compare it to Adam Cole in AEW. There are those folks, and look, Adam Cole is one of the most wonderful people in pro wrestling. He is genuinely one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I've had multiple occasions to hang around with him and talk to him and such. And I'll be honest, the wrestling audience is a little smarter these days. And there are those wrestlers that no matter what you do, whether you turn them heel or not, it's going to be hard to get the wrestling audience to react the way, you intended. So turning Naomi heel and make her vicious and everything, maybe, but are the fans going to accept her as a heel? Or are they going to continue to cheer her? I mean, that we're seeing it with Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley allegedly is a heel, but she gets as big a reaction as some of the babyface girls.
And it's funny that you bring up, and I think it's a good spot. I'm going to deviate a little bit, because I know I don't know if you got a chance to see that clip I sent you, but it's funny that you brought that up, because there was a clip on a show that Vince Russo did, and it was talking to Al Snow, and there was an interview that Rhea Ripley was doing with Denise Salcedo, where they were playing Never Have I Ever, and we're talking to Rhea Ripley about had she ever used a dating app. And the reaction from Vince Russo and Al Snow is, this is your number one heel. And she's sitting here talking about whether she's used a dating app or not. So, how can you present her as a heel? So part of that presentation, is that our fault? Is that our fault as people that are in the media, that we're going out and we're doing interviews and we're asking people questions like that to say, hey, we're trying to give a chance for everybody to get to know these people. And when we do that, we're shattering that wall. We're shattering that kayfabe. So people are like, well, Rhea Ripley's a really nice person. And she is. She's a sweetheart. I've met her. She's really nice. So it's hard to get people to hate her. And it's the same thing with somebody like a Naomi, or you talked about Adam Cole. A lot of people know that Adam Cole is a really nice person. So it makes it harder for people to hate him. Is that on us?
Us, by us, do you mean
the
wrestling media?
Yeah.
I would say a little bit. It's, we are not in the days of like Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Bill Apter, where the magazine kept kayfabe, and all that. I think it's a little bit of that. I think it's a little bit, as I mentioned, wrestling audience is getting smarter. And I heard the clip. First of all, Vince Russo is
Vince Russo's Vince Russo.
Vince Russo, yeah. Now, I do respect Al Snow quite a bit. I've been able to meet him a couple times, and he's he knows what he's talking about. I think that, look, this whole thing about pulling the curtain back and all that started back in the 90s with NWO and DX and that. And it has, that curtain has gotten more open with each passing year, to the point where when I talk to legends, old timers, and I'll even reference Dustin Rhodes, they reference pro wrestling as a sport. It is a sport. There are those, however, in wrestling that consider it a performance art, like theater. So if you look at it as a performance art, then those individuals that are in the ring, they're actors.
They're actors.
They're playing a part. For instance, what's his name? Dadgummit. Christopher Walken has played villains left and right. I'm sure that Christopher Walken, the person, probably is a nice gentleman. But you see him in one of those movies, and yeah, he's not nice.
Right.
I think that wrestling fans nowadays see those individuals in the ring the same way. They're playing a role. But outside the ring, they're just like you and me. Part of it, and I'll be honest, there's a little bit of it on WWE. WWE has pushed their social media so much. Everything's on social media. Everything's about social media. Twitter handles, Instagram handles, what's trending, all that good stuff. They always tout about they've got so many million views on social media, whatever. They'll come. In fact, as you mentioned, I'm in Austin, Texas. We have the South by Southwest Festival. In fact, it'll be coming up probably in about 2 weeks. And the first part of that is South by Southwest Interactive. And I believe every year for at least the last 10 or 15, there has been somebody from WWE here to talk about their social media reach and such. And so you're pushing everybody to go to social media and follow the wrestlers and all that. Well, that social media, those wrestlers are being themselves.
Right.
So, I think there's blame to go around for everybody. I don't think you're not going to change it.
Yeah,
it's there.
It's very, and it's on the performers too, because if you look at some of the top heels, you look at somebody like Christian right now, for example. If you do an interview with Christian, he's coming in and he's not breaking character. He's going to be a heel and he's going to be a jerk to you no matter what. MJF is kind of the same way. And you'll, like the first question, you're going to have a general idea of what you're going to be facing. But until that interview starts, you kind of don't know. Sometimes you do, depending on who it is. But a lot of times you get that first question. But just imagine, for example, and it's been one of the more interesting things since I really got into having more guests on the show. Am I talking to the performer or am I talking to the character? I mean, just imagine if you had Tom Hanks coming into your studio. Or am I talking to Tom Hanks or am I talking to Forrest Gump? You know, I mean, that's what I think some people don't understand about doing what we do is you don't know for sure who you're going to be talking to when they walk into the door or they get on your stream or whatever. It's tricky. It's really tricky. And for them, and I get what Al Snow was saying in that clip, you know, but that's kind of on the performer to decide how they're going to handle the interview. So if they're going to handle it as themselves, the person, you know, that's on them. And then we kind of take it from there. So yeah, I mean, but it's interesting. I think fans, you know, kind of want to hear a little bit of both, which makes it even tougher. So yeah, it's an interesting topic.
I think that you know, being a heel today is much different than being a heel back in the 80s and 90s. Look, I've heard all the stories, and you know, I'm in Texas, so I grew up on World Class Championship Wrestling up in the Metroplex. I've heard the stories. You know, Michael Hayes, you know, and the Freebirds, you know, they'd have their vehicle parked outside the Sportatorium, and you know, half the time they'd come out there with their tires slashed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, they'd come down to the ring, and if you remember those views of the Sportatorium, the fans are right there.
Yeah.
And you know, you hear the stories about old ladies, you know, trying to stab them with their stick pins and such as that. And I think there might be a little something there about, okay, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to have my tires get stabbed with stick pins and all that good stuff. So I think there's a little bit of that as well. So it's, you know, and this is not, look, I worked for over 15 years in sports radio. This isn't like me interviewing Michael Parsons, you know, the great linebacker for the Cowboys. There was a time when I was doing when I started doing Sports Guys Talking Wrestling, I would ask in advance, okay, am I talking to the person or am I talking to the wrestler? So that I would know how to frame the interview. Funny thing was, I would say 98% of the wrestlers I've talked to, they want me to talk to the person.
Yeah.
You mentioned MJF. You know, I hate to blow this. I hate to blow his cover here. Max is probably one of the nicest guys I know. And in fact, there's been several times I get lucky enough, I'll go backstage during, you know, for an AEW show. He would come up and give me a big hug. He used to wrestle used to be called Inspire Pro. Now it's Inspire After Death. I do commentary for them. We got a show tonight, by the way. But he used to wrestle for us at Inspire. And so I got to know him, you know, as he would come to Austin, you know, pretty regularly. And so, yeah, so it got to the point he would, you know, I'd see him when I would see him in Major League Wrestling or in AEW. When I come up to him backstage, he'd come up and give me a big old hug and would seem genuinely happy to see me.
Yeah. Well, next time I see Max, he might get some words from me. He might. Yeah. We've had a few run-ins, so we'll see what happens there. But hey, we're going to take a break. This all sorts of fun in pro wrestling, man. I'll tell you what, it is an amazing industry. We're going to be back with more with myself and Stu Myrick here on the Mark Hoke Show. And we'll get back to talking about Elimination Chamber. We'll go off to the side. But that's part of the fun of this. You know, that's what we do. Stick around, everybody. We'll be right back with more best in pro wrestling news and entertainment on the Mark Hoke Show on KDAWN. Stick around for more.
101.5 FM KDAWN.
You're listening to the #1 professional wrestling radio show in Vegas, The Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Now, here again is Mark Hoke.
And let's get back to it. We got a couple minutes here, short segment. We ran a little long on the last one. That's okay. Mark Hoke and Stu Myrick from Sports Guys Talking Wrestling sitting in with me for the whole show because he's just crazy like that. Very happy to have you with us, Stu. What's going on?
Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're the man. So, as we were before we got off on our little tangent there, we were talking about Elimination Chamber. I'm sure we'll be having to carry that over to the next hour. We had a tag match. Judgment Day had taken on the interestingly named team, and boy, I tell you what, apparently even Michael Cole didn't like the name of the team, the New Catch Republic, because they busted on Pete Dunne and Tyler Bates' name in the broadcast. I didn't think that was very helpful, but yeah, but they did.
It was a fine match.
Yeah.
But like you said, no surprises there.
No, not at all. But a good match. Judgment Day, of course, gets away with the titles, and I would imagine we got. Gosh, if we get Awesome Truth taking those guys on at WrestleMania, that'd be fun.
That'd be intriguing, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll see if that happens. But yeah, Judgment Day gets out of there, and I want to save time for the men's match because we got about 2 minutes. So, but Rhea Ripley gets a win against Nia Jax. And, of course, Rhea gets the adulation of her fellow Aussies. But I do want to take a minute and talk about Nia's performance, because what a comeback for her after being regarded as one of the most unsafe performers in WWE, somebody that, had been released and nobody wanted around. Would you have thought, Stu, after all this time, that we would be seeing her main eventing a premium live event and having a great performance and everybody was happy?
Look, it was shocking enough that she was brought back into WWE. But yeah, her performance, at Elimination Chamber, fantastic. She did exactly what what was expected, played her part to a T. And it looks like it looks like this run, she's got more motivation to better herself in the ring. And I'm looking forward to see what's next for Nia Jax.
Yeah, I'm thinking we'll probably see her against Jade Cargill, but got to give her a lot of credit. She's in better shape. She definitely is wrestling a lot better. I don't think we're going to see any of the problems that she's had in the past. Really did a fantastic job and looked like she belonged in a main event match. I mean, she's been there before, but this time she showed that she should be among the elite. And, all the credit in the world to her. That was a terrific performance for her last night with the spotlight squarely on her. So congratulations to Nia Jax. Terrific comeback for her. Way to go. Speaking of coming back, we got another hour. Isn't that great, Stu?
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right. So we got more of the Mark Hoke Show coming up here on KDAWN 101.5 FM, the Talk of Las Vegas. And if you're out there, wherever you are, the Odyssey app is available to you. So you can download that. I know Stu's show's on the Odyssey app as well, so you can check out Sports Guys Talking Wrestling there. And, of course, if you're out there on the YouTube land or Facebook, you can, come on live stream. And, hey, if you like what we're saying or not, you can give us a comment, ask a question. We're more than happy to take your comments and whatever you want to throw at us. We'd appreciate it. Stick around. Hour 2 is coming up on KDAWN. We'll be right back. Want more of The Mark Hoke Show? Follow us on Twitter at Mark Hoke Show, like us on Facebook at The Mark Hoke Show, and visit markhokeshow.com to keep up with everything happening with the show. And remember to check out all of our archive shows on YouTube at The Mark Hoke Show and download our podcasts at markhokeshow.podbean.com and all your favorite podcast outlets. So join The Mark Hoke Show family today, and thanks for listening.